Wide Eye from the blog Crazy Bitches Are Us wrote in to say, you said that poor living conditions on reserve, such as the housing situation in Attawapiskat, are due to a total lack of accountability. What evidence do you have to prove your statement?
Well, obviously, we all saw the media reports. There were some financial issues. There was the spouse of the chief who was managing the budgets on the reserve.
Sure. Although in small communities, we know that everybody's related to everybody.
Well, you know what?
It's not necessarily a red flag unless there's something amiss with the books.
Well, you know what? If I were to hire my spouse in my office, there'd be a public outrage, and I don't think that it's defensible, even though we're talking about First Nations communities, to have that kind of nepotism. Because obviously people are left in the dark. There was even some elders who spoke in the community saying that there was no accountability whatsoever. And having said that, the fact that a third-party manager was named to the community is something that should not be taken lightly, because the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, present or past, of any government, don't name third-party managers for nothing, because they're quite costly. And in fact, in some cases, naming a third-party manager could cost as much as $60,000 per month. Mm-hmm. So these are substantial costs to taxpayers. But the fact that one was named certainly leads to believe that serious financial issues did take place. We also know, according to media reports...
Their books were up on the website, though, right? Like, I mean, wouldn't the government have known that there were problems in the book? I mean, I guess when you're getting down to the accountability issue, this is where everybody gets confused. Here, there's misspending on reserve. Send in a third-party manager to fix it. Why didn't the government know there was misspending? Chiefs file 130-odd reports to government every year. I mean, is all this money going in a big black hole somewhere? Is that what you're saying? Like, where are the accountability problems? How do we account for this money?
Well, here's where it's important to really ask questions and target the department, because obviously there were some financial statements that were posted on the community's website. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, those are audited financial statements, but it doesn't describe a clear picture of where exactly the funds were spent. For example, they may have received $2 million for education, but does anybody know with certainty that $2 million was spent on education? And the answer is no. And the audited financial statements will not give you those answers either. So this is where it's important for people to know and viewers to know that, sure, you could have audited financial statements, but it doesn't lead to the conclusion that money was well spent. It just means that the community received the money from Aboriginal Affairs and money was spent. But it doesn't actually tell us if the money was properly spent.
We don't know it was misspent either, in all fairness.
No,
like
absolutely.
That, I mean... I don't want to use Attawapiskat as an example, and I'm sure you're not implying that it was, but we're talking sort of more theoretically now. So why doesn't the department then know where money's getting spent? Like, are they really writing these blank checks and sending them out to communities?
Well, I think in many cases they are. I think that the department obviously closely works with First Nations communities. And I think that the department either does not want to open up a can of worms. I don't think that they want to make the reporting system or they don't want to make decisions that results occur from spending. For example, if funding is spent on education, but the funding is not entirely spent on education, I don't think that the department really closely looks at that and asks questions because they don't want to open up that can of worms. I think that often we hear that First Nations communities and leaders have the right to self-government and they want less of the department and the minister into their own affairs, which I agree with. But at the same time, I think that with the current structures and system, if money is being given to a First Nations community for housing or education, that it should be spent on those issues. And if they need more money, and if they are accountable with respect to what they receive, how they spend it, and more importantly, if people have access to the funding, I think that it would build the argument that if there is underfunding in these issues, that taxpayers wouldn't have any problem in the future in spending more money. But we don't know that with certainty right now, and I'll be the first one to point the department in terms of not having enough stringent structures in place to ensure that funding is properly spent.